What's up, everybody? Tim Anderson here, aka Renfell. Welcome back to another episode of Mondays in Middle Earth. Today is a recap episode in the sense that I just finished up The Fellowship of the Ring the previous week. I'm diving into the Two Towers right now. We obviously already did The Hobbit. I've been doing some more Rings of Power videos. We've been diving into some more topics around that show and the ridiculousness around that. And it kind of brought me to the moment that before I jump into the Two Towers, I just wanted to do a recap because I feel like we've already chewed through a lot over the past. I think we've already done like 10 episodes or something just to get through The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And to get to this point, that means we've covered a lot of territory, and some of that is relevant to the Rings of Power conversations that are going on. So I wanted to kind of address some of that stuff before we get into the Two Towers, which I remember being my favorite book out of the series, and I can't wait to dive back in. We are going to be going through everything this summer, including the Silmarillion. I don't know if we'll get through it before we get to the Rings of Power show. We might. I might have to power read some to get through. Like, if it took me 10 weeks to get through The Hobbit and Fellowship of the Ring, it might take another 8 weeks to get through. We don't have that many months left until Rings of Power starts, so we'll see. Be that as it may, some of the things that really have been concerning me recently were or maybe it's not concerning is a wrong word to choose, but just something that got me pondering was with the Empire cover reveals of the proto hobbits, the Harfoots, I think is what they're calling them. So one of the things we analyzed in the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring was the section on concerning hobbits, and I didn't really dig into it too deeply at the time until we saw the Proto Hobbit reveal. Now, there have been some conversations around the concerning hobbits section at the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, which I think it's an interesting conversation at the very least because there are multiple viewpoints and interpretations on what Tolkien meant when he was talking about the timeline for hobbits. They're related to men, they're descended from men, but there's no actual timeline for when hobbits first came onto the scene. We only get this sort of vague passage about how they never really did anything worthwhile before the Third Age, right? Or they never were did anything noteworthy enough to be remembered in the records until the Third Age. I don't have the exact wording in front of me, so I'm paraphrasing here. But at the same time, we also hear that, they've been around since the Elder Days, and people are like, well, the Elder Days mean the First Age. It doesn't just mean the Third Age, and that's a fair point. Like, that's a fair point that the Elder Days could be mentioning the First Age. So I think that there are some creative liberties being taken. Um, I think some people have gotten a little upset, and I don't know why, about the fact that they've got a black hobbit. Like somebody on one of my YouTube videos made a comment along the lines of, "See, this is just Amazon's forced wokeness because they saw that Tolkien wrote that the Harfoots were, darker of skin than the other ones, and that's exactly why, they are that way, and that's why they jumped at that and said, look, it's the perfect opportunity to jump in and have them be black hobbits." And I was like, well, they very well could have been. It doesn't say specifically; it just says they were darker of skin. Now that could mean many, many, many things. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were or they weren't black. I think that's definitely something that's open to interpretation, and I don't personally have a problem with it. My take on the Proto Hobbits is that they've kind of, again, they're playing loose and fast with the lore, and this has a lot to do with the fact that the current Tolkien estate manager is not Christopher Tolkien, and they do not appear to have a love of the source material like Christopher did, carrying on from his father. So we're getting some things that are, swinging a little bit wide of what we've previously read in the books or what many of us have interpreted that to say. None of that is a bad thing. Like, anybody who's been around my videos for a while knows that I have been very much on the bandwagon of being against Amazon's forced diversity and forced wokeness. But I don't necessarily think what they're doing with the Hobbits is part of that. Um, I think that's, and this is just my personal opinion. I may lose some followers over this, who knows? But I think that that's an example of an opening of an opportunity to say, you know what? That's actually open to a wider interpretation where we could maybe put in a black actor in that role and have an actual male black actor or female black actress, playing the part of a hobbit and get some diversity in there in a natural way without forcing it into the source material and trying to make it be about the politics. Instead, it's just like, hey, dark skinned. We can have darker skinned actors in those roles. So, just going back and recapping on the Concerning Hobbits chapter, I know there's been a lot of chatter around that forward section in particular as it relates to the cover information that we got from the Empire covers, but that's sort of neither here nor there in the source of the greater conversation. It's just one of the many things that's being talked about in the scope of the Rings of Power conversation. As I read through the Fellowship of the Ring, I have to say that there were a lot of things that I'd forgotten. And if you watch the previous, yeah, I think it was 9 episodes, 8 episodes, I forget how many episodes it was for the Fellowship of the Ring. Um, some of my favorite, I think my two favorite chapters in there were um, the Council of Elrond, because you're getting so many lore dumps, and then I think it's the Great River, which is the next to last chapter, when they're going down the river and Legolas shoots the Nazgul out of the sky, and you get this scene where they're on the boats and everyone's thinking thoughts to themselves, and there's this scene where Boromir, like Merry and Pippin are watching Boromir, and he's just got like this gleam in his eye, and he's biting his nails, and he's like rowing his boat with this gleam in his eye, like following Aragorn. And my look right there is literally what I envision. Like Boromir's just like, he's obsessed at this point. Like the ring has taken over him completely. Like it started on the road south when they were coming out of Rivendell, and it got really bad after uh, Moria and the fall of Gandalf. And it was like once Gandalf was gone, Boromir kind of felt like, you know what? I'm just as good as Aragorn. Like I'm even better than Aragorn. Like Aragorn just wants to do this, that, and the other, and he's following the crazy wizard. And I actually live in the city and come from the city, and I need that ring to protect my people because I don't want people to die. And he starts obsessing over it to the point where even when they're on Lothlorien, it's starting to eat at him. And he gives this long monologue when they're in Lothlorien, and that's something where I feel like in the films they did a decent job of showing his sort of the ring's corruption. One of my favorite scenes in the films is when they're going up through the snow and the ring falls and off of Frodo's chest, off his neck, and Boromir picks it up and he does the line about it's a strange fate or something. I forget the exact line, but a strange fate that we should be tied to such a small thing, such a little thing, or something like that. And he holds it up, and the camera zooms into the ring as he's holding it on, and Aragorn puts his hand on his sword and says, "Give the ring back to Frodo." And there's this moment where you can tell that Boromir's starting to feel the pull of the ring, and he's like, and then he gives it back, and he's like, "It's no matter to me. It's no big deal." Like but he's feeling it. And then in the book, we get a much, much deeper explanation of the corruptive nature of the ring. And I think that that's something that it's portrayed in the films, but I think it's portrayed in a different way in the films because especially the way they did the Faramir character. I know a lot of people felt that they did Faramir dirty in the film versions. And the first time I watched the films, I was very much upset. But then when I watched the extended editions and I understood the some of the challenges of adapting something to the film medium, I began to appreciate the way that they did that with Faramir because it really did show how the ring could corrupt even the purest of heart. And even though we don't, that scene is very controversial. That the way they did that adaptation is very controversial to some people. Coming back to what we have in the book, you don't always have all the time to explain these things in a film format. So getting that extra dialogue where Boromir is continually bitching and moaning about all these things and ranting, like literally ranting for paragraphs about this, that, and the other because the ring could save so many lives and why are we doing this? Why are we on this quest to throw it away? Why can't we use it as a weapon? Like I don't understand. And really he's never really nobody really ever gives him a good answer other than just, well, it's not possible, dude. The ring is too corruptive. Like that sounds it sounds legitimate to us as readers, but if you really put yourself into Boromir's shoes, his character, the way that is impacting him, it's almost like an addiction, someone who's trying to stop smoking cigarettes or stop drinking alcohol. It's like continually just gnawing at the back of your brain, and it's just like, "Rah," um, crazy stuff. Um, Before we go any further into the rest of it, I'd like to say if you like these episodes and you've been following along with the Mondays in Middle Earth series, awesome. But if you're new here and this is your first time tuning into one of these, I'd love it if you could do me a favor. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you get updates for the future episodes of this as I continue to read through all the books in the series. Don't forget, if you do like the content, do me a solid. Hit that super thanks button down below and support me as a content creator here on YouTube. Even if you don't follow the streams, you can do super thanks here for any amount. It's a great way to say, hey, you know what, Tim? You're kind of like my Netflix. You're kind of like my Hulu or my HBO Plus or my Disney Plus, HBO Max, Paramount Plus, all those other things. And you view me as a source of good content. Buy me a cup of coffee. $2, $3, $5, $10, whatever you feel comfortable. Hit that super thanks button. Don't forget you can also join the Adventurers Guild down below. We get audio chapters of my publications, is what's going out right now. We're going to be doing some more fun stuff this summer as I continue my adventures to full-time content creator. And don't forget, if you like my stuff and you want to read my material as well, the stuff I create as a writer, The World of the Weave and the Void, because it's a book series, it's a 5th edition tabletop setting, and it's a point and click adventure game, and I do all the writing for that. My brother does development, Chris is doing artwork. We got all sorts of fun stuff over there. You can go to patreon.com/wandering hermits to find out more information. Hopefully, we'll see you over there as well. Don't forget, the Discord channel has a specific section set up for the Mondays in Middle Earth show. So hopefully, we'll see you in there as well. Um, Sort of towards the rest of this, recap of the first two books, The Hobbit, I feel like because there was such a great length of time between The Hobbit being written and The Fellowship of the Ring, I do, especially after having just finished The Fellowship of the Ring, there's such a huge style change from the way The Hobbit was written to where The Fellowship of the Ring was written. We do get glimpses of some of the sort of fairy tale childlike moments which filled The Hobbit, right? We get some of that in the Lord of the Rings, but the Lord of the Rings is very much a darker tale. It is a much more serious tale. We're dealing with big world issues here, not just a little hobbit off on an adventure to go up against a dragon and steal some treasure. This is the fate of the world, and we're dealing with not only that, but Tolkien had also had 15 plus years to continue writing his legendarium, the world of Arda and the entirety of Middle Earth, and we get glimpses of that with like the full-on poem in Elvish script. I don't know if that's the Silva. I don't know the language. Quenya and the other one. I'm not that deep into Tolkien methodology and mythology to know all the names of the languages and stuff. But we get that towards the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, and then we get the English translation, which is really cool because it shows you the depth of world building that he had gone into, and also his fascination with creation of languages, which no other fantasy author has really ever done to that level. I mean, if you look at shows like Game of Thrones, they bring in dialect people who write these languages and create these fictional languages for the actors to use. Um, and that's cool, but I don't think it's as deep as what Tolkien did, spending his lifetime creating all these languages and then burying the meaning of these into the texts themselves, and then doing all the artwork and everything else. Because if you look at the door when they get to Moria and the walls of Moria and Durin's door, I believe it's called. I forget the name of the actual door. The door, the dim will be whatever. The big door. You know what I'm talking about. Um, and he did all of that, including all of the scripting for the text around that door and the runes and everything else. And that's a level of detail that I think is one of the reasons why The Lord of the Rings is like one of the best-selling books of all time outside of the Bible, because no other author has ever poured so much of their life into creating not just the world, but also the languages and the backstory and everything else. So that even though you're writing about characters who are on a journey at this specific point in time, in the back of your mind, you're going, and this, that, and these 500 other things affected this over here. There's a section where one of the ways that Galadriel sways Gimli over to her side is that when they're in Lothlorien and he compliments, he says something, but then she compliments the beauty of Moria and the things that the dwarves crafted, and she compares it to the most beautiful things on the planet because they were. But she shows that she's above the racism that so many of her people have against the dwarves because of the wars and all the other issues that they had, and it stirs Gimli's heart, and it makes him say, lady, you just that's the best compliment anyone's ever said. But you know what? Your world is more beautiful than mine. Like the elven, your forest kingdom. Like it's this back and forth where you're just sitting here going, all of that backstory is stuff that helped make that moment far more impactful because Galadriel's been around long enough that she's seen all of these things. She's seen the wonders of the ages. And Tolkien knew that as a writer because he had already created this massive backstory for her and everyone else and the history of this world leading up to it. So there's a lot of really cool stuff that happened in this book. As I got to the end of Fellowship of the Ring, I thought it ended differently. It had been a long time since I read the book, so I was definitely associating the ending of the film with the ending of the book, and it doesn't end the same way. So I'm left hanging with what's going to happen in the first couple of chapters in the Two Towers, which I can't wait to get to. So, um, in any case, I hope you've been enjoying this series as I go through and reread the books. I love teasing people about the whole beard thing because the beards are mentioned so many times in The Hobbit, and then you have these so-called experts out in the world saying Tolkien never said that dwarves have beards, and I'm like, have you never read the frickin' Hobbit before? I'm going to continue to poke fun at that every time I see Princess Dis or D or whatever her name is that doesn't have a beard. I'm going to continue to make fun of that the whole time, but it is what it is. In any case, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next episode. Like, follow, subscribe. See you in Discord. Until next time, cheers.